plastic, vinyl plastic, finds its way into every American home and business.
They're using plastic nowadays to make most everything.
We listen to records pressed from it. We walk on it, ride in cars full of it. We eat off of it, and food we eat is wrapped in it. We shower behind it. We guzzle beer from cans lined with it. Babies pacified by nipples molded from it. And the blood of life flows through it. A multi-billion-dollar industry has created a plastic paradise, the modern way of living. It has also created a plastic peril. It has spawned a new occupational disease, striking workers in the vinyl chloride industry, a cancer called angiosarcoma of the liver, the first victims discovered only recently. We know of 14 deaths so far in the United States, 26 deaths so far worldwide.
Dr. Creech finally shook me and says, "Ray, I hate to tell you this, but you've got angiosarcoma."
Many workers who don't have cancer worry about getting it.
They found out that I had a diseased liver. My spleen was infected, plus my liver was enlarged also.
My test came back bad, and I'm only 26 years old. A couple of young kids, it really scares you.
At a congressional hearing, deep concern over whether the risk extends beyond the thousands working with the chemical to the hundreds of thousands working on the finished products.
This is something we don't know, and you can't expect me to answer that question because the research needed to have given the information for an answer to that question has never been done. Nor do I know, for example, what the hazard is among people like yourself and me who in our spare time may do some do-it-yourself home painting with vinyl paints, in which the resin has been placed and which we're all worried about now that they may contain vinyl chloride and therefore constitute a cancer hazard in many homes.
Vinyl chloride. How much a hazard in our homes? How much a hazard in our factories? How much is being done about it?
CBS reports the case of the plastic peril with CBS News correspondent Morton Dean.
I'd like you to meet a grandmother. Me.
I'm the great-grandmother.
And I'm the mother. People often tell us what a healthy-looking family we are.
That's because we take care of ourselves. We eat right, exercise,
and we take Geritol to make sure we get enough iron and vitamins.
Geritol, more than twice the iron of any ordinary supplement, and some very important vitamins.
Here's my son, and he's 9 months old.
Now I'll tell you our ages.
Oh, no, you won't.
Geritol, every day.
And the band played on.
Do you realize what time it is?
Even Gloria won't have any trouble falling asleep tonight.
Oh, Uncle Ned remembers I sometimes have trouble falling asleep. He's the one who told me about Sominex.
That's right.
And Uncle Ned,
what?
You know Sominex really does help make me drowsy so I can get to sleep.
With a lot less trouble.
Take Sominex tonight.
Sominex. It helps take the trouble out of falling asleep.
Carl E. Strow died in 1968, dead at the age of 43. Joseph H. Darst died in 1971, dead at the age of 38. Ezra R. Dinwiddie died in 1973, dead at the age of 58. Earl E. Parks died in 1973, dead at the age of 49. 4 men with several things in common: how and where they earned their living, how and why they met their death. They were killed by an extremely rare cancer, a rare cancer of the liver called angiosarcoma. They all worked at the same place, B.F. Goodrich, Louisville, Kentucky. And they all worked at the same job, converting VC, vinyl chloride, from a liquefied gas into PVC, polyvinyl chloride, a resin. With plasticizers added, it becomes one of the most widely used plastics, vinyl plastic. This Goodrich plant is one of the oldest polyvinyl chloride facilities in the country, dating back to 1942, when the plastics industry was in its infancy. Recently, working conditions and federal regulations affecting the industry have changed dramatically. In April, the Department of Labor, faced with mounting evidence the deadly disease, angiosarcoma, was an occupational hazard, set a temporary emergency national standard. The standard limiting the amount of vinyl chloride in the air workers breathe to 50 parts of vinyl chloride per 1 million parts of air, a drastic drop from the previous level of 500 parts per million. But not low enough to satisfy labor or the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. They had argued that the only safe level was no level. In plants such as Goodrich, there is more frequent monitoring of the exposure level now. Protective clothing and masks more frequently used. Changes resulting from or accelerated by the discovery that an unusually large number of employees at this plant, 6 now known dead, 2 victims still living, were struck by this rare cancer. The improvement in working conditions here at Goodrich and in other PVC plants across the country have not eliminated the controversy over how risky it is to hold such a job. Antone Vitoni, president of the chemical division, B.F. Goodrich.
The plant, in our opinion, is as safe today from this risk as it is from other risks. The risks of explosion, which we've always worried about. The risk of mechanical failures and so forth, which we have, of course, concentrated on.
The optimism and confidence of the president of the chemical division of B.F. Goodrich not shared by many of the workers at the Louisville plant.
Do you work in what the company now considers to be a safe area?
The mill room's supposed to be a safe area. There's a dust problem, but you're breathing fumes and dust. And how do they know that there won't be a chemical lung problem on top of a liver problem?
I haven't seen anything they've done for ventilation in the mill room.
I say ventilation is pitiful. Like I say, I get filthy constantly. And my test came back bad, and I'm only 26 years old. A couple young kids, it really scares you. And I'm up there every day for 8 hours, and I breathe it, and I probably breathe it more than anybody because I'm filthy when I get out, and I know it's in my lungs because I cough it up.
Well, what concerns you most when you walk in that shop in the morning?
Well, the fact that it's an uncurable disease so far, and that there's no 100% test that tells you whether you do or do not have it until it gets to the advanced stage, and once it gets to that stage, so far they say it's uncurable.
You're talking about cancer of the liver?
Yeah.
Does that prey on your mind? I mean, is it something that is constantly with you or not?
Well, I had a high reading my first test, and it scared me.
I've got a little damage to mine, and Dr. Creech told me it was some vinyl chloride. And
to your liver?
Yes. But if I've already got damage, then how much more is it going to take? It just kind of upsets me and my wife, naturally, and my mother. And it's, I know it's a problem. It's just, what do you do?
Quit?
Well, I've been there 22 years and practically my whole life, so my whole working life, so it's not that easy. I mean, 55 years old, you can retire. I've only got 8 more years if I can make it.
2 months after this interview, Jim Samford was one of 8 employees with liver damage furloughed from work with pay. The company felt it was too risky for them to continue on the job. The company had begun extensive medical examinations of its employees, including liver function tests, in September 1973. According to B.F. Goodrich, the plant's medical director was discovering more liver problems among plant workers than he was finding in his own private practice. In the initial tests of over 270 PVC employees, 55 were found to have liver abnormalities and were given further examinations. 15 of those considered to have possibly significant liver disease.
How many tests have you had?
This is my 4th blood test.
What happened to the other 3?
I haven't passed them satisfactorily yet. I really don't know all the details of it, just that I am still in retesting process. I I was down in 2 areas, which I don't know what 2 areas they really are, or what they mean to me, or I really don't. So just waiting for the doctors to find out. I don't believe they know for sure.
Apprehensive?
Yes, very. Have 4 children, kind of worried. But just have to wait and see what happens.
Mr. Ashley, how many tests have you had?
This is my 8th test.
8th?
Yes, sir.
Make this for me.
What were the results of the other 7?
They were all bad. He said that, well, they was improving, but they were still, they wasn't good enough for me to go back to the area, to PVC.
How long have you worked at the plant?
I've been there for 9 months.
How old are you?
19.
In the course of testing, 2 cases of angiosarcoma of the liver were discovered. Both men now undergoing experimental treatment. One, Ray Gettelfinger, 42 years old, father of 6 children. Gettelfinger says he and some of his co-workers were uneasy, had a feeling years ago that something was wrong.
We had fears. We didn't know why. But along there, about 10 years ago, I'd say something near 1965, we lost 2 or 3 of our buddies, whichever one does where he's employed, and we got to looking around, and we got to thinking, now there's there's too many of us guys going out of here the wrong way. And we got to wondering, now, we better not worry too much about retiring. We better worry about living till we're old enough to retire.
Did you do anything about it?
We didn't do nothing. I would say the company sat on the other side and done the same thing. They didn't do anything.
Do you wish sometimes that you had never seen or heard of polyvinyl chloride resin?
No, I don't wish that. I've learned lots. I've raised a family with it. It's put many a bunch of groceries on this table, and not one of us could go in any room of our home without seeing a product that we haven't made.
You're proud of that. You feel as if you've really made a contribution to the lifestyle.
I think everyone should feel that way about his profession.
Despite your illness?
Despite my illness. Despite my illness and despite the chances of my future, I have fears, there's no doubt, which you understand. I think anyone would, but I figure that I've always said, my wife can verify this from the time we got married 23 or 24 years ago, that we would much rather live hard for 40 years than exist for 80.
Ray Gettelfinger worked at the Louisville plant for 20 years. 20 years in the range of time it takes for most cancers to develop. It was 20 years ago that the plastics industry entered into a period of massive expansion. Today, there are some 50 VC and PVC processing plants in the United States, employing 6,500 workers, and thousands of factories, employing hundreds of thousands of workers who make the myriad vinyl plastic products that are found in every American home and business. The fear now, the time bomb theory. Has an epidemic begun? Is this disease, until now at least, so rare that it has been blamed for killing less than 25 persons out of more than 1.5 million Americans who die each year from disease and natural causes? Is this rare disease, angiosarcoma of the liver, about to become a common killer?
Jaguar XJ is neither all performance nor all luxury. During its design and development, Jaguar gave no absolute veto power to either stylist or engineer. For the Jaguar is a complete motor car, one that performs its function as a road car with agility and stamina, yet offers its owners those elusive qualities of grace, dignity, and exclusivity.
shows you how you can. His price is right on everything, and he's got your favorite brand. Ace is the place with the helpful hardware man. Yeah, Ace is the place with the helpful hardware man.
Within weeks after the discovery of the original angiosarcoma deaths of Goodrich workers at Louisville, a check of death records revealed some vinyl chloride workers in other plants, in other cities, had died from the rare disease. At Union Carbide, South Charleston, West Virginia, 1 worker dead. Goodyear, Niagara Falls, New York, 3 workers dead. Firestone, Pottstown, Pennsylvania, another victim. The alarming news heightened anxiety within the industry and triggered the wholesale examination of vinyl chloride workers, including these at the Union Carbide Company Clinic in South Charleston, one of the plants visited by Dr. Irving Selikoff and his team of occupational and environmental health experts. The Selikoff team from New York's Mount Sinai School of Medicine is funded mainly by federal grants.
Push hard, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. Watch those numbers, move them up, keep going.
The concern of the medical team extended beyond the well-being of the workers themselves.
Take them home? Take them home, yeah. Your wife washes them? Right.
Is it laundered with the family laundry by your wife?
Tell me, who washes your clothes?
The wife.
Your wife does?
Yes.
You bring them home then?
Right.
You may have wondered why our people asked you during your examinations whether you wash your clothes at home. The reason is that with other materials that produce cancer, we have sometimes seen them brought home on the clothes. This has been found with beryllium, it's been found with asbestos, it's been found with polychlorinated biphenyls, it's been found with a number of things. Now, we don't know that this is the case with vinyl chloride, but there's a possibility because the polymer, the dried resin, has very small amounts of the monomer, the vinyl chloride, still attached to it. And I would urge you not to have your family exposed to your work clothes at home.
Have they found anything besides cancer vinyl chloride might cause, or have y'all looked for anything besides cancer vinyl chloride?
Vinyl chloride can cause a lot of other things. It can cause the bones of the fingers to change and sometimes actually to collapse. It can cause changes in the nerves and the blood vessels of the hands. The liver can be affected even besides cancer. Scarring can occur in the liver, fibrosis. This is important because when the liver becomes scarred, the blood flowing through the liver is interfered with. And as a result, it backs up. And sometimes as it backs up, the blood vessels can break, the veins can break, and you can get a fatal hemorrhage even.
Once you have found that a man has this cancer caused from vinyl chloride, will you be able to cure it?
The answer is no. At this moment, we do not know how to cure angiosarcoma. But I would immediately add that we've only had some 15 weeks or so to think about this.
A certain irony concerning the discovery of this new occupational disease. The giant plastics industry developed and grew as the result of painstaking scientific research and discovery. However, according to the Director of Environmental Health of the B.F. Goodrich Company, the discovery of the connection between vinyl chloride and the deaths of vinyl chloride workers came about almost by accident.
On December 18th, 1973, I was at the Louisville plant talking with our plant physician there, Dr. John Creech, about the results of some routine testing that we had started earlier last fall. And he mentioned almost in passing that in reviewing the records, he had learned that we had had a death in 1973 from an angiosarcoma. And he thought he remembered that 2 years earlier in 1971, he, in his own private practice, had had a death from angiosarcoma in an employee who worked for Goodrich. And he thought this was rather strange because to him it was a quite rare disease.
1 month later, in January, the Goodrich Company presented the disturbing news, including discovery of a third victim to the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, headquartered in Rockville, Maryland, and then headed by Dr. Marcus Key.
In a way, we were fortunate in detecting the vinyl chloride outbreak because of the rarity of the kind of cancer that was produced. If it had been merely an excess of a common cancer, it might have gone unnoticed for several more years. We moved very fast, probably faster than we'd ever done before. I think we all recognize the potential seriousness of the problem. And 2 days later, we fielded a team at the Louisville plant to begin industrial hygiene surveys.
3 months later, April 1974, the seriousness of the problem underscored by the AFL-CIO's Industrial Union Department at a meeting in New York. Topic, vinyl chloride. With high-ranking officials of NIOSH present, union representatives questioned the government's commitment to an all-out attack on this new occupational disease.
How many people do you think it would take to really do the kind of a job we're talking about, the job that's needed?
Well, I think most of that answer should come from Dr. Wagner because right now we need to get people out into the field and into the plants and find out the extent of this problem. Does it, you know, is it into the plastics industry? Is it into the final consumer products? And we can't do that in the laboratory. And I think that's where Dr. Wagner should, you know.
What is the present manpower assignment to this project?
It varies at any point in time between 6 and 10 people.
Professionals, that is?
No, not professionals. No? Total staff.
Including secretaries, is this what you...
including, other than secretaries, but clerical support staff, yes. Essentially, I think at any one point in time, if we take today as an example, we would have 4 professionals on it, 1 physician. And
there's no additional resources contemplated for the immediate future?
Not that I'm aware of.
And what's going to happen to the other projects that have had to be tabled?
They'll get done later.
Later, that same month, April 1974, the government effort was criticized at a congressional hearing by Dr. Selikoff.
When NIOSH, the Division of Clinical Field Studies, which does the field work for NIOSH, was alerted on January 23rd to the vinyl chloride problem, and they assigned their few people to it, they have dropped every other piece of research they were doing. Now, you tell the fibrous glass workers that we shouldn't worry about them. And you tell the people exposed to benzodine that nobody has to be concerned anymore. And the host of other things that they were attempting to do. They found that they couldn't do both. And in this great country of ours, in the United States of America, the governmental agency, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, that had responsibility to our workers, found that they were able to do only one thing at a time.
Dr. Selikoff's statement of last April, and today, that same basic problem remains.
Now hold it in your left hand, rest it against your chin and look through the viewer. Now all you use is one finger. You turn this focusing wheel to make everything sharp.
Now there is a new way to open up the world for someone.
Press the electric button.
The SX70. Almost effortlessly, it slips through life. Searching out, recording. watch your creation come to life, growing more vivid, more detailed, until minutes later you're looking at a print almost as real as life itself. Polaroid's SX70 land camera. It can open up the world.
You say you dreamt your house caught fire and the fireman stepped on your chihuahua and drowned your geranium, and your wife drove through a chicken truck and you had the wrong coverage so your insurance company won't pay. Is that what's troubling you, Bunky? Well, stand up and take a walk in the sun, straight to your independent insurance agent. He's an expert on trouble. Independent of any one company, he works to find the best policies for you. Look him up in the yellow pages. If he can't help you, nobody can.
Do you have anything for headaches?
Yeah. Take 2 of these.
Arthritis pain formula. I have a headache, not arthritis.
Doesn't matter. Arthritis pain formula is great for occasional headaches, too. Look at the label.
Also relieves headaches. Must be strong.
You bet it is. APF has more pain reliever in it than most headache tablets. Arthritis pain formula.
Hey, thanks. Arthritis pain formula is great for headaches.
Arthritis pain formula. Great for headaches, too.
The case of the plastic Peril continues with CBS News correspondent Morton Dean.
With workers dead, others ill, and a new occupational disease diagnosed, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, the primary federal agency involved, began its first in-depth hygiene survey of a vinyl chloride plant. The survey coming 5 months after the discovery of the new health hazard.
And the reason we use these small ones like this and put it up right near your mouth and nose is so that...
June 11th, 1974. The NIOSH field team visits Union Carbide in South Charleston, West Virginia, where one worker had succumbed to the liver cancer and where another worker has since died from the disease.
After you leave here, are you going to the packer room? Okay. Okay, is that going to be in your way? Is that going to interfere with your operation?
The visit to the plant exhibited a prime example of the government in conflict with itself. The NIOSH field team wore respirators, underscoring the federal agency's belief that the federal government's own emergency air quality standard was not safe enough. However, the plant management, complying with the federal government standard and believing it was safe, saw no reason to require its workers to always wear masks. In addition to the field surveys, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health had begun the long and tedious job of microfilming records of some 9,000 present and former employees at 4 plants, with the first order of business tracking down former employees, those living to see how their health was holding up, those not to find out what caused their death. Mid-June, the story moves to Connecticut at the State Department of Health, a possible added and ominous dimension. In response to a request from the National Center for Disease Control to the nation's tumor registries, the Connecticut Tumor Registry reported 2 deaths, one definitely diagnosed as angiosarcoma, the other highly suspicious. Men who worked not where the vinyl chloride gas was made into the vinyl plastic, but in plants where the vinyl plastic was made into finished products.
We were very concerned at these reports because what they suggested was that persons with a very low level of exposure of vinyl chloride may develop angiosarcoma of the liver. In addition to the 2 cases out of Connecticut, we have also had a report of a fabrication worker in Scotland who died from angiosarcoma of the liver. We have had reports from Sweden and from West Germany of persons working in other environments with vinyl chloride exposures who have died from this disease. We haven't a sufficient number of cases yet to say without question that these deaths are vinyl chloride induced. Considering the rarity of this disease, we are very concerned that that could be so.
What would you say to a plastic worker who might say, come on now, Dr. Lloyd, you're frightening the heck out of all of us on the basis of only a relatively few deaths around the world?
Well, some people would say that we're alarmists. But I think when a man dies from an occupational exposure that is unnecessary and can be controlled, we should be alarmed. Initially, we had 3 deaths reported. Then we had 5 and 7, and it kept growing. At this point, we've identified 26, where we have just gotten our investigations underway. I don't know at what number point we should become terribly concerned. I look upon it as a very serious problem.
At about the same time, there was more disquieting news from Connecticut. 4 other angiosarcoma deaths. None of the victims is known to have worked with vinyl chloride, but 2 of the victims, both elderly, had lived within 2 miles of a vinyl products plant. And so, for the first time, the suspicion, the problem may have jumped the factory fence. It is estimated that nationally, more than 200 million pounds of vinyl chloride gas escapes into the atmosphere each year. Where it goes and what danger it might spread is the province of the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. The agency, while expressing great concern over the deaths in Connecticut, has not and does not plan to measure the quality of air where the deaths occurred. But the agency has sampled air in 7 other communities around the country where vinyl chloride is processed. The agency measured various levels of vinyl chloride up to distances of 3 miles away from the plants. A reading as high as 30 parts per million, but levels generally below 1 part per million.
We do not believe there is any scientific basis to believe that there is an imminent hazard to the people who live in the vicinity of the plants. However, prudence dictates that the levels be driven down as fast as possible. And to that end, EPA has taken several steps in the last few months. We have met with the leadership of the major manufacturers of polyvinyl chloride and vinyl chloride and urged immediate steps on their part to reduce levels. Also, we are proceeding very rapidly to develop an air standard under the Clean Air Act to ensure that the levels will be driven down considerably in the very near future.
Mr. Schweitzer, knowing what you now know, would Glenn Schweitzer live in the vicinity of a vinyl chloride or polyvinyl chloride or processing plant?
I think if I were faced with that decision, I would certainly factor into my considerations the uncertainties. On the other hand, I think there may well be circumstances which may require my contact with the chemical. I have walked through a number of these plants and don't feel I was exposed to any unnecessary risk, but certainly that is a consideration.
Well, what are you saying? You would prefer not to live in the vicinity of the plant if you didn't have to?
I think fortunately I'm not faced with having to make that kind of judgment. I think that it may well be that other considerations would compel me to live in the plant. Yes, I wouldn't necessarily rule it out.
Not everybody lives within the shadow of a smokestack. But everybody lives or works within the reach of an aerosol spray can. The first big hint of possible danger to consumers from vinyl chloride came from the aerosol sprays, many of which for years had used the vinyl gas as a propellant. Some hairsprays have been among those vinyl-propelled aerosols banned from the marketplace, so hairdressers have switched to other sprays. Such is the nature of the federal bureaucracy that various sprays come under the jurisdiction of various federal agencies: the Environmental Protection Agency, the Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. So it was possible for some vinyl-propelled aerosols to be banned by 2 agencies, EPA and FDA, on different days in April, while a third agency, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, did not issue its ban until this month. This ban gives consumers the right to get their money back if they can determine which of their aerosols come under the jurisdiction of this particular agency. While the banned aerosols are supposed to be off the shelves of stores, millions may still be on the shelves at home, products bought before the ban. By looking at the cans, it is just about impossible to know which aerosols contain vinyl chloride. Few cans list all of their ingredients, and the people who make them, as well as the people who regulate them, apparently were reluctant to publicize the products in question. a situation that began to change when a Ralph Nader consumer organization, the Health Research Group, twisted the federal arm.
You had difficulty, didn't you, in urging the federal government to publicize the brand names of the products containing vinyl chloride?
Yeah, this is the case for the Environmental Protection Agency, which was aware of dozens of household pesticide sprays, aerosol pesticide sprays that contained vinyl chloride. They knew the names and wouldn't release them.
Why?
Well, they claimed that it was a trade secret. We finally sued them in a federal court, and they have eventually now released all the names.
The Nader Group, the Health Research Group, says that it forced the EPA to release the names of the brands of aerosols containing vinyl chloride as a propellant. Is that true?
The Health Research Group was a very significant factor in moving the government bureaucracy, EPA, FDA, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission to take prompt and decisive action with regard to aerosol propellants using VC.
But shouldn't the government be criticized? I mean, it was no big problem. The question was, what aerosols contain vinyl chloride?
The problem really was to raise that question to a sufficiently high level of attention within the government so you'd get action.
Is it possible that had not the Health Research Group pushed and shoved, that even today that we wouldn't know what aerosols in our homes contain vinyl chloride?
I'd like to say we would have moved even in the absence of that push, but I just don't know.
Dr. Wolf's Health Research Group was also rankled at the Food and Drug Administration, which regulates aerosols, including hairsprays and cosmetics.
The first response that we got from the FDA was, well, we've asked the industry, and they've assured us that there aren't any of these products around. February 1974. Well, now, more than half a year later, it turns out that the FDA has found that rather than there being no products around, that there are 50 or 100 products around. The point is that you don't trust the industry to tell you that there are no products containing vinyl chloride. What they may have meant was that there were none being manufactured, but there were millions of cans sitting on the shelves in stores, in warehouses, and unfortunately in people's homes.
Dr. Schmidt, how do I know what contains vinyl chloride? I've looked at plastic containers at home, no markings. The aerosol cans, no markings. I don't know which ones in my house of the 50 I have.
The confidence that you should have in the Food and Drug Administration would lead you to ask the Food and Drug Administration to publish it.
Well, tell me, which containers that I have in my house contain vinyl chloride? I mean, do you have a list? I don't mean to press you here. Is there a list available of manufacturers?
Yes, we have the results of the survey we did.
Is it published?
And, did we publish in our preamble of our regulation or any place the use?
No, we don't have all the detailed data, I think, that you're talking about.
A follow-up call this month to the local FDA office, the FDA saying it might be able to answer queries concerning aerosols over the phone, but still had no list to send out. The Food and Drug Administration says it is currently studying the use of vinyl plastic as a food packaging material. The FDA study began after it was learned that vinyl chloride was leaching from plastic liquor bottles into the liquor. Those bottles no longer in use. For the shopper who may be curious which food containers are made of vinyl chloride and which are not, it is virtually impossible to tell. Does the consumer really have something to worry about?
Mr. Simpson, the name of the agency is U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. Question about the consumer wakes up in the morning, his baby is sucking on a nipple made of vinyl. In the evening, he's guzzling a beer can that has a vinyl lining, driving a car with a vinyl top, wearing a vinyl jacket. Does he have anything to worry about?
I wish I had an absolute answer for you and for those people. I do those same things. I hope I have most of the information that's in this agency, and I'm not losing any sleep over it personally, because now you're talking plastics, and you're not talking about the vinyl chloride gas. And I think it's very easy for anyone to be irresponsible and say that, and I think it's very easy for people to get a misimpression and go off on a witch hunt And I think it's a responsibility of both yourself and ourselves to make sure that doesn't happen. We're not concealing anything. But I don't think you can equate vinyl chloride to other polyvinyl chlorides. I just don't think you can leap that far.
How do we know?
Well, no one ever knows with a certainty. You must respect the judgment of informed people. And so you must go ask informed people and draw a judgment. That's what we do.
So who are the informed people in the question of whether polyvinyl chloride is safe around the house?
We do it through research. Some cooperative research at Edgewood Arsenal, where we're doing animal studies. We're exposing test animals to vinyl chloride of different levels, down to 50 parts per million. And and then we'll see if any kind of levels like that would leach out of any kind of, quote, plastics.
My colleague reminds me that call to the research group conducting that study you mentioned. A gentleman there said that the study is not yet underway.
The one on a different level, the one at Edgewood Arsenal?
Yeah, was it Edgewood Arsenal?
Yeah. Robert Hare.
Dr. Hare?
Yeah.
Then he is the correct one. He's our director of biomedical research, and what I was told is that it was on, so perhaps I have wrong information.
The chairman of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, interviewed on July 26, was indeed wrong. 10 days later, a follow-up call to the Commission's Bureau of Biomedical Science, a source there telling CBS News the possibility of conducting laboratory tests was still an iffy question. Everything was still in the talk stage. A follow-up call this month. No research has begun.
Mr. Harding, you're president of the Society of the Plastics Industry Incorporated. What would you say to the person who knows he has plastic containers around the house with foodstuffs in it, has meat wrapped in vinyl protective coverings, uses vinyl plastic table cover and that sort of thing?
I would advise them to do what I'm doing, which is to go right on using them in their home. I think we need to make further studies to be absolutely sure. Nothing in these days is totally certain without a great deal of detailed study, and there hasn't been time for that. But I know in our case, we're going right ahead using all these products with no concern, no fear, in the case of our own family.
And a year ago or so, wouldn't that have been true even of the aerosol sprays?
I think so.
But now there's a suggestion that it might be.
And you and I can cite many other examples of the same kind of problem. The older we get, I hope the smarter we get.
Well, let me get back to the question then. Someone has asked me, as we have discussed this broadcast, as we were putting it together, you're not answering my question, Mort. You're not telling me whether there is, in fact, a hazard.
I'm not going to make any flat-out statements on an area where we're still discovering things every day. I think it's important to point out that tremendous progress has been made in the 8 months since the first cases of angiosarcoma were reported. The industry has done a great deal, and I'm really proud of the record. But we're the first to say that the vinyl producers have a long way to go. We're a long way from all the answers. And when I'm talking casually to my friends, I say, don't worry. When I'm on camera in front of a lot of people, I say I know of no cause to worry. And so be it. That's the life we lead today, Mort.
An attic bedroom up under the eaves, with a place for the one thing that will make her new house a home. You made every board by hand. Isn't it nice to know that the people who moved it understand what a familiar little house can mean in a strange new one? Allied Van Lines. We move families, not just furniture.
Has anybody seen the hamburger buns?
Yeah, on the kitchen table. Smells like the hamburgers are done.
Yeah, a little overdone.
A little?
What's a father and son overnight without a few burnt hamburgers? Or without a big pot of Van Camp's pork and beans? It's a meal that's been satisfying the appetites of brave and hungry woodsmen for over a century.
Dad, do bears eat pork and beans?
Van Camp's pork and beans, one of America's great simple pleasures.
There was death in the working place. Vinyl chloride workers dead from a rare liver cancer. There was doubt in the marketplace. Major consumer items, aerosol sprays propelled by vinyl chloride gas, were banned. The deaths and the doubts of 1974 might have been explored a year earlier than they were. Research sponsored by European industry had already linked the chemical to the cancer. Research in Bologna, Italy, in the laboratories of Dr. Cesare Maltoni, had produced angiosarcoma of the liver in rats exposed to vinyl chloride. In January of 1973, Maltoni's findings were studied by representatives from the U.S. plastics industry, who were dispatched to Italy by the Manufacturing Chemists Association. Yet, the Italian scientists' findings were kept relatively quiet in this country, not even revealed to U.S. health agencies. 6 months after the Americans visited Maltoni, Maltoni's name and his most significant findings were not mentioned during a Washington meeting between industry representatives and officials of the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, a meeting held to discuss vinyl chloride. Industry did not find the omission unusual. Dr. T.R. Torkelson, a member of the industry team that went to Italy.
But I think we're dwelling too much on a technicality here. The critical thing was, were tumors formed, were they real tumors, cancer, and were they, at what concentrations? NIOSH was given this information. It doesn't really make any difference whether the tumor is in the liver or the lung. It's still a serious situation and requires further study.
In any event, the Maltoni study did have an impact. Research proposed in the United States 2 years earlier at last got off the ground. Industrial biotest laboratories, hired by the Chemists Association to conduct animal tests. Preliminary results even more significant than Dr. Maltoni's initial findings. Angiosarcoma induced in mice at 50 parts per million. 50 parts per million, the same level adopted by the U.S. government as safe for vinyl chloride workers only days before. The results of another industry study, a study of workers, were announced at a packed emergency international symposium on vinyl chloride in Manhattan. The symposium sponsored by the New York Academy of Science and the American Cancer Society. The industry and the researchers it hired, Tabershaw Cooper Associates, painted as rosy a picture as their findings would allow. Dr. Irving Tabershaw.
Well, we've demonstrated that there is as favorable a mortality ratio working in the industry as you would expect in any population at work. Secondly, we found that there was an increase in cancer. I can't characterize how much of an increase because numbers are so small that we cannot really describe them as significant or not. But there is a trend for the workers in this study to have a little more cancer than we would have expected.
Dr. Tabershaw, would you work in a plant working with vinyl chloride today?
You said today, Mr. Dean. I think in the plants that are cleaned up, the plants that are properly controlled, I would give serious consideration to working in them.
Are there any such plants?
I don't really know, but I assume and I presume that plant conditions can be and I think are being controlled to the extent of making it safe to work in them.
Well, what is that safe level?
I wish I knew, Mr. Dean.
The results of a recent study for the government was at variance with Tabershaw's study for industry. Dr. Joseph Wagner, Director of Field Studies for the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health.
Well, we only have definitive data on 2 plants right today, and I might preface by saying that we have 32% of the population still lost to follow-up. However, we're seeing 5 times as much brain cancer as you would expect.
5 times?
5 times. We're seeing 10 times to 11 times as much liver cancer as you would expect. We're seeing doubling of the lung cancer and a doubling of the lymphatic tumors.
Would you work in a vinyl chloride or polyvinyl chloride plant?
knowing what I do and believing what I do about a no detectable level, I would never work in a vinyl chloride plant.
The no detectable level for vinyl chloride workers was the goal of Dr. Wagner, his agency, and organized labor. A goal industry claimed it would find impossible to meet, would force the industry to shut down, costing some 2 million jobs. On October 1st, a new maximum exposure level was announced by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, a 1 part per million average during a normal working day. Respirators must be available for workers in those plants unable to comply with the regulation. The new regulation will take effect in January. Government recognition of how dangerous the gas might have been during the past 30 years of production. The industry has filed suit in federal court appealing the decision, claiming it is technically infeasible to meet that standard. Some industry spokesmen have warned the new standard could result in an industry shutdown. Labor isn't totally happy either, complaining that the use of respirators will not become mandatory for another year. The new maximum level affecting vinyl chloride does nothing to alleviate a much larger problem, does nothing to eliminate the threat of other vinyl chlorides. Dr. Marcus Key.
In our list of toxic substances, there are some 12,000 separate listings of materials that have some degree of toxicity. And of these, there are, something over 1,200 that have tumor-producing properties identified in one or more laboratory animals. So we have quite a backlog of chemical substances already in use to be concerned about.
What you're saying, in this a nation of technology, the greatest in the world, in 1974, we're still not in a position of protecting workers or the general public from the products and substances and chemicals we produce.
We have a long way to go in this regard. That is correct.
How many more Ray Gettelfingers? How many more tombstones? How many more vinyl chlorides will there be? Vinyl chloride is but one villain on that long list of potentially deadly chemicals that are a part of our everyday lives. And that list will grow. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of new chemicals are introduced every year. And there are no laws requiring all chemicals be adequately tested before they are marketed. For 3.5 years now, Congress has had before it legislation creating a Toxic Substances Control Act, which would mandate testing of chemicals to determine standards of safety. The Senate has passed one version of the legislation, the House another. They have yet to resolve their differences. During the course of preparing our broadcast, we frequently heard that all life is a risk. But does all life have to be? Must a worker in the factory risk his life to earn his living? Must a consumer in the home risk catastrophe because there is no all-encompassing policy or law that prevents the marketing of conveniences that may be capable of killing us? Most vinyl consumer products are now considered safe. No evidence available to the contrary. However, almost everyone we questioned agreed that the research that may be able to resolve that point conclusively has yet to be done. Perhaps consumer and worker alike, all of us, have had a false sense of security. All those agencies and organizations that we presume are watching out for us all of the time. The tragic truth is we usually pay a price for our protection. Too often, the bodies are counted before the bureaucrats and businessmen react. Too often, in the pursuit of progress and profit, our health and the health of our environment, where we work and where we live, are secondary matters. Too often, our environment is the laboratory, and we are the guinea pigs. This is Morton Dean for CBS Reports.
For quick and exciting desserts, start with Jell-O brand gelatin, like Betty Hausman of Philadelphia.
On busy days, I prepare a delicious gelatin and ice cream dessert in minutes. All I do is stir 1 cup of ice cream into half a cup of dissolved Jell-O gelatin. Spoon out some thickened gelatin and fruit, top with the ice cream mixture, chill during dinner, and serve.
For Betty Hausman's recipe, see October Women's magazines. For a quick dessert on a busy day, start with Jell-O gelatin.
Tools are my living. I use 3-in-1 oil to help prevent rust and keep my tools working better and lasting longer. Here's a tip. These two workmen have identical saws. We'll wipe this one with 3-in-1 oil. 3-in-1 oil with LubriShield makes the oiled saw slippery, so it cuts easier and faster. 3-in-1 oil also makes screws and nails go into wood easier and faster. Use 3-in-1 oil to help prevent rust, make things work better, last longer.
We offer an apology to you on the part of all of us who have, in essence, failed you. Because here you are, faced with a problem through no fault of your own. I raise such questions as your understanding over the years that you were supposed to have a safe working place, that somebody was looking after this, and for this we really apologize to you. Very humbly, because I think our humbleness will perhaps keep us from making similar mistakes in the future. It can't go on this way.
The Carol Burnett Show will return next Saturday night at 10 o'clock, 9 Central Time, on most of these stations.